welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going over what I watched in the month of November. Now this is the 11th video of like this on my channel, so if you want to go back and look at any of the previous months, you can do that. This is going to be in a playlist with the rest of those. If this is the first one you're watching, just a simple kind of breakdown of what this is every day, or not every single day, but for every single day in the year 2024, I want to watch a movie. This is the third straight year that I've tried accomplishing this, and so far so good. It looks like we're going to get it done 3 years in a row. So there are 30 films here. What we're going to do is we're just going to go through, and first we're going to rate them, and then at the end we're going to go back, look at them all, and we're going to rank them. So let's just jump straight into the rating portion. Up first, we had Caddo Lake. This is one a lot of people not a lot of people saw this. I believe it's streaming on Max, I think. A lot of people really dug it. I think there's parts of it that I think were like cool concept wise, but some of the acting and some of the just other decisions that were made just kind of fell a little bit flat to me. So it's just kind of a middle of the road, but I know a lot of people really enjoyed it. So, kind of a recommendation, go check it out if you think you might enjoy it. And then we have Time Cut. This is kind of a trend that's happened the last couple years of these traveling back in time to solve the murder and save, a family member, or save, just someone that was murdered in the past. And I'm trying to Totally Killer was the name of the movie that came out last year. I liked that a whole lot better than this one. This one's like a 1.5, kind of the very predictable twist on who the killer is, and then everything just kind of is nice and clean and resolved super easy, and just wasn't a whole lot of drama or tension in it for me. Then we have The Apprentice. I didn't necessarily love the film as much as I was hoping I would, but Sebastian Stan's performance, especially as the film goes on, just becomes more and more amazing what he's able to pull off in this film. So for that reason, we're going to go up to a 3.5. Then we have Castaway. So this is I talk about liking to do this, when there's a director that, a film's coming out. So you see the next film is Here by Robert Zemeckis. So I wanted to go back and watch the kind of the most popular Robert Zemeckis film that I hadn't seen, and that was Castaway. It was okay. I remember this being a film that like my parents, I don't remember if they loved it or they just watched it multiple times, but I remember this, like, I associate this movie with, like, my parents. But we're going to go with the 3.5 there for Castaway. And then Here, the new Robert Zemeckis film, there was things here that I thought were an interesting idea, an interesting concept. I think the whole thing kind of just, it's tough. There was parts about it that I really liked. I don't think it was the worst like movie that I've seen. A lot of people are acting like this is one of the worst movies. I do like the concept or the boldness of trying to create a film that is just centered on a fixed camera. And there's, I guess kind of one moment where the camera kind of moves a little bit, but for the most part, I appreciate the boldness and kind of the audacity to go for it. So I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt, give it a 2.5, but I didn't really connect with any of the characters, and it didn't really hit me on an emotional level. The end of the film is kind of an emotional gut punch that an older couple that was in the theater with me, they lost it at that. They were crying, but for me, it didn't resonate with me as much emotionally. So I think we're gonna go with a 2.5 here for Here. I'm like right on the edge of like a 2.5 and a 3, but for now we're gonna leave it 2.5. Then we have Forrest Gump. I had seen Forrest Gump once years ago, and it was before I knew that a lot of people didn't really like Forrest Gump. Going back, and again, this is another Robert Zemeckis film that I wanted to go back and just kind of revisit, because it had been maybe almost a decade since I last seen Forrest Gump. Now knowing that there's a lot of people that kind of aren't the biggest fans of Forrest Gump, I still watched it, and for me, it's an enjoyable, fun movie. Like, I don't hate Jenny the way that, like, that's kind of the main thing, is everyone just hates Jenny. I don't think maybe some of the characters were as fleshed out as they could be, but I think that's kind of the point, is people are only there for these brief moments of Forrest's life. So I still, all in all, I still thought it was an enjoyable movie. And then we have Heretic. So we're going to put this up at a 4-star. This is one of those films for me that I think had the potential of kind of bordering on kind of insensitive, or just not very well done. But as someone who has served and did serve a mission for the LDS Church, I think this is one of the best representations of Mormon characters, like in film that I've seen, in a film that's not like a film made by the church. It's one of the best representations of, like, there were so many moments, there's so many things, so many just in the initial um, when they're sitting down with Mr. Reed, kind of in the initial setup there, that I'm like, this, it was very accurate. There was a lot of kind of flashbacks of that's how I would react if, investigator is what they're called, when someone that you're teaching the church to, or teaching lessons about the church to, if they say things, there were some of the reactions that they had that were very similar to like how I would have reacted. So there was a whole lot about this that I think was just kind of very accurate and very, you can tell that there was care that was put into the film, and for that reason, I mean, it's a good film. I like the ending, I think, more than a lot of people did. I don't love the whole middle section as much, but for the fact that it was creepily made and they had a vision, and I think it was done respectfully for kind of all parties involved. I For that reason, I did enjoy the film a whole lot. We're gonna go with a 4 star for Heretic. And then I watched the Back to the Future trilogy, and this is interesting because this was years ago. I had seen, this is probably almost pushing a decade too, that I had a group of friends at this time in my life, and I went over to their house, and we were kind of having a big party, and we were going to watch the Back to the Future trilogy. And so we watched the first movie, and then months later, we ended up, kind of just, we were going to do it, I think, kind of like, all in one week, or once every Friday night or something, for 3 weeks. We were going to watch all of them. But it ended up being months later. We finally got back and watched the second movie. And again, this was the first movie. It was playing on in the background. I wasn't paying 100% attention, but I was kind of watching it, and but it was kind of on in the background as we were just talking and doing things. And so then a couple months later, we're watching the second movie, and I'm thinking, this is so similar. Like, I feel like this is like so similar to the first movie. And then they were like, oh well, yeah, it's because they're going back and they're kind of revisiting, and you have some of the scenes, some of the sets or whatever, that the scene where kind of getting them out of the car when they're kind of fighting in the car and all that stuff, you kind of see it from different angles. And so I was like, okay, I guess that that kind of makes sense or whatever. But then it never ended up watching the third. We just didn't get around to it. So now, a decade later, going back and I'm watching the first Back to the Future movie, I already had this logged on Letterboxd because I remember seeing it. And as I'm watching this first movie, I realized I did not see this movie. I saw the part two different times back then because I do not remember the first movie. So kind of just an interesting realization I had a decade later. So I did enjoy the first more than the second. So we're gonna go with the first one at a 4 star, which I've now seen Back to the Future once in my life. Back to the Future Part Two, we're gonna go with a 3.5. That one I have seen 3 times now in my life, and then Back to the Future Part Three, we're gonna go with a 3 star. That was the first time again on that one. So it's interesting that I've seen the second one now 3 times, and in my head I just, when I before rewatching or before watching these, I just, so much of like what was happening in the second movie, I was just kind of blending it across like two different movies because I would have sworn I had seen both of them, but it's crazy that it was actually just the second one that I'd seen 2 different times. So gonna go like that for the Back to the Future trilogy. Then we have Blitz. You're gonna notice pretty much starting here going forward, there's a whole lot of new directors, new film, director's previous film, or like going back and seeing something of theirs that I hadn't seen yet. So Blitz, directed by Steve McQueen. I love Saoirse Ronan. A lot of this film just kind of was, it's very slow, it's very I mean, not just slow, but deliberate in kind of its steadied pacing. But it just ultimately didn't catch my interest as much as I was hoping it would. It wasn't Saoirse I was hoping was going to be like a front runner for supporting actress from this film. She didn't, she's great in the scenes that she has, but there's just not a whole lot for a lot of the actors to do. That the time is split amongst a lot of different characters, multiple stories. I mean, it's all kind of the same story, but we're different points of view and we're kind of bouncing all over the place, so it didn't quite ever really find its rhythm for me. So I'm going to go with a 3 for Blitz. But then the next day I went back and watched 12 Years a Slave. Steve McQueen, Best Picture winner from, what year was 12 Years a Slave? 2014, 13. I don't know exactly what year 12 Years a Slave was, but this is the first time that I had seen this. I just wasn't really into movies, right, when this came out, and so I wasn't exactly going to go watch a slavery movie. Um, and I knew that this is one that a lot of people say it's a really hard watch, and it is. I agree, but I still think it's a very powerful film, very amazing acting throughout the film. So we're gonna go up at a 4.5 there for 12 Years a Slave. And then we had Amelia Perez, which is a film that I had not really heard anything about. Well, I guess I should say I had heard during its festival circuits, I had heard that it was getting great reviews and that people were loving it, and it was a front runner for so many different Oscars. So I was really excited to see it. And then the day it dropped on Netflix, I instantly saw Twitter was just flooded with people posting clips, and a lot of it I was watching and being like, "Oh, this doesn't look good," or "This is bad," but I'm like, hopefully I'm just taking this all out of context and it's going to make more sense in context. It kind of does, but not really. It's just such a bold and crazy film of it's a soap opera musical following the cartel. Like, it is tackling so many things, and for all that it's tackling, I think they're pulling it off the best they can. But ultimately, it was just a really weird movie going experience. And I think this is maybe a film that on a second watch, because I'm sure I'll be rewatching this again in a couple months during the Oscar, rewatching all the Oscar nominated films. Maybe on a second watch, I'll appreciate kind of the boldness and everything it's doing a little bit more. But for right now, I didn't hate it, but it's kind of right in the middle. It's a little below average, 2.5 for Amelia Perez. But then I wanted to go back and watch. This is the director. I'm gonna butcher his name, but Jaquez Audiard, I believe is how you pronounce it. He had a film that came out a couple years ago, Paris 13th District, that I was always really wanting to see because it had Noemi Merlant from Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It also, believe the film is written by Celine Sciamma, writer-director of Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So it's a film that I was always really wanting to see. I was always super interested in it, just kind of never saw it and then kind of just forgot about it. But when I realized this was the follow-up to the director's next film after this, I was like, I have to go back and give this a shot now. I think it's on Hulu. Is where I watched it, and it is not as good as I was hoping it was going to be. It wasn't as it's kind of a very kind of slice of life following three-ish like two main characters, but then there's a third one that gets introduced, and then eventually a fourth character. So you're kind of following the lives of these like 3, 4 people, and it's just a very intimate look about just them navigating their life and their sexual relationships, like at this time in their life. So it was interesting. It was kind of a nice little intimate look at these people in their lives, but it didn't quite hit me. The ending left a lot to be desired, so I'm just going to go with a 3 here for Paris 13th District. And then we have Roald Dahl's The Witches. Um, I believe this was taken off of Max, so I had to rent it. Wish I would have just watched it years ago when it was still on Max, because it's not great. So we're going with a 1.5 for The Witches. I'm not the biggest Roald Dahl fan. And this is not the main Roald Dahl story, and so I just kind of was just not really entertained by this at all. We then have coming into the next two. Um, for some reason I was wanting to call him a different name. Sean Baker, the director here of these next two films. So before I saw Anora, I wanted to watch Tangerine. Tangerine I knew nothing about, but I knew Sean Baker. I knew the name. I knew his style of how he does characters and the way he casts his actors. And the only thing I knew about Tangerine was this poster, this beautiful looking poster. So I always had assumed that Tangerine was going to be more like Florida Project and not like Red Rocket, was kind of the way I looked at it. And so I watched Tangerine, and I've come to this realization that I don't think I'm the biggest Sean Baker fan. Like, a lot of people love him, especially like on Letterboxd. All of his films have great ratings, and I think I'm below on every Sean Baker film. Like, I don't like it as much as like the general consensus. So Tangerine, there's stuff that I like. There's the way it's filmed and the way it's shot, and some of the scenes I think are done really well. But overall, as a whole story, I just don't really care too much for it, so it's going at a 3. And then Anora is like this year's Best Picture frontrunner, and I did enjoy Anora. I think it's up there with the Florida Project for me, is like my favorite of his two films. But both of those, I'm still below like the average. I'm still below the consensus. I don't know if I love Anora as like a Best Picture film, Best Picture winner, as it's like the big frontrunner right now. But I still did enjoy Anora more than average. Like I really love Mikey Madison was great in this. A lot of the supporting actors are all good as well. Need to start learning some of their names because I know some of them are getting campaigned for supporting actress. So I do think that, or supporting actor. But I do know that like I loved kind of the screenplay. I loved a lot of the tension. I loved kind of the way the story went. I'm not the biggest fan, I guess, of kind of how it ended, but all in all, I still had a great time with Anora. It was one of my favorite movies of the year. I don't know if it's quite top 10 for me, but it's just kind of weird that I think I'm coming to this realization that I don't love Sean Baker as much as a lot of people do. And then we have Tick Tick Boom. Now, the reason I decided to watch Tick Tick Boom mainly was because last month, I don't know if you remember or noticed, right at the end of the month, I was watching a bunch of movies with Andrew Garfield in it. Some of them, with between We Live in Time and then Spider-Man, No Way Home. I was just kind of in this mood for Andrew Garfield. I was just kind of having fun watching Andrew Garfield films. So I actually started watching this on November 1st because it was just a couple days after watching those other Andrew Garfield films. But then the first song of this is the 3090, about turning 30 years old. And as I was about to turn 30 years old later this month, I decided I was gonna wait until then, to wait until my 30th birthday to watch it. So to see if it hits a little bit harder. It was. I didn't really need to wait. It's not like I was going through that big of an existential crisis as Andrew Garfield is about turning 30. Um, I will say that I think each time that I think when I first watched Tick Tick Boom, I think I gave it a 3.5. Second watch, I bumped it up to a 4. This watch, I'm bumping it up to a 4.5. This is one of those films that I think with each additional rewatch, I'm loving it more and more. So that's where we're going, is a 4.5 here for Tick Tick Boom. And then the next day, I watched Bo Burnham's Inside. The same thing, has a song about turning 30. So I was, same thing, watching it, trying to get that existential crisis moment for me, seeing if I hit that, listening to another song about turning 30 and the stress and the anxiety that comes with that. I love Bo Burnham. I love Inside. It's a 5-star film for me. I know there's a lot of kind of criticism or people kind of not mocking it, but just talking about how they didn't think it was as authentic as it should have been, because he could have really just left that room at any time. He wasn't really trapped inside this room. But I never viewed it as that. I viewed it as him not acting, but just her pretending that he's trapped in the room, but using the room as just kind of a metaphor for being trapped in that moment in time that we all were back in 2020. So I loved Inside. So we're going 5-star there. And then we have Death Becomes Her. This is one of those films, I will say, I think I would have enjoyed this more if I didn't know the premise, if I didn't know what happens later in the film, and what these characters are doing, because the film treats it like it's kind of a big twist, right? And since I already kind of knew it, I didn't enjoy it as much. This is one that maybe in the future, maybe I'll rewatch it again, and just being able to watch it and not have any expectations, just kind of pretend as if I'm watching this for the first time and just kind of wash everything out of my mind. Maybe I'll enjoy it a little bit more, but I didn't really love this as much as I know a lot of people do, so it's another film that we're going right at a 3-star. Then we have Million Dollar Baby, so we're going to notice the same thing here that we're doing with Clint Eastwood. There is a chance that there is another Million Dollar Baby video coming soon on the channel, soonish, I should say. So I'm not going to talk too much about it just in case, but we're going with a 4.5 for Million Dollar Baby. And then Juror Number 2, the new Clint Eastwood film. I cannot believe, I think it's Warner Brothers, right, is the studio. I can't believe they're just screwing around with this as much as they are. This needed to have just gotten a wide release, and being able to have been seen by more people because I thoroughly enjoyed this. Nicholas Holt is phenomenal in this. I used to not be the biggest Nicholas Holt fan. I'm starting to love Nicholas Holt with the last couple movies. There's another movie coming up in a couple days that we're going to talk about with Nicholas Holt. Like I'm just start learning to just really love him as an actor, and he was phenomenal in this, as well as like Zoe Deutsch and Toni Collette. There's just a lot of great acting in this film. And then we have A Real Pain, Jesse Eisenberg's new film. Both he and Kieran Culkin are both great in this film. This is another one that I think maybe I need to give it a rewatch and give it another shot because I didn't love it as much as I was hoping, and I didn't love it as much as like I'm hearing other people love it to the point that this is also another Best Picture frontrunner. There's a lot of things with this film, a lot of buzz that I'm hearing that I didn't quite get from my first watch. So I'm excited to rewatch this in a couple months and see if maybe I just wasn't in the right headspace the first watch, and maybe I'm gonna love it a little bit more. But for now, we're gonna put it at a 3.5. And then we have Flight. Watched this before Gladiator 2, just kind of in a Denzel Washington mood. And this is a film where if this wasn't Denzel Washington in the lead here, the lead actor, this would have been a whole lot lower on the rankings. Denzel is carrying this film. He's doing an excellent job in this. We're going with a 3.5 for Flight. Then we have The Order. So this is a new movie that I think comes out in a couple weeks. I think it's like December 8th or 9th or somewhere around there. I got to see this a couple weeks early. I don't know if this is just a nationwide thing or if this is just kind of a local thing where I'm at, but multiple theater chains have started doing what they're calling secret cinema, and pretty much all it is you buy a ticket, they tell you you know the time you show up to the theater. The only thing you know is the rating of the film. So all I knew was I was going into the theater, I was watching an R-rated movie, and the only other thing you know is that it's coming out in the next couple weeks, like within the next month or so, that it's an upcoming movie that hasn't been released yet. So you're getting kind of like a sneak peek at an upcoming movie. And so I went into this theater. All I knew was it was an R-rated movie coming out within the next month. So I went in hopeful that it was going to be Nosferatu or Night Bitch or a complete unknown. There was some films that I was expecting, and that ended up being this film called The Order that I think maybe I'd heard the title once, but like didn't really know a whole ton about it. So it was a really cool experience to go into just a film that I knew nothing about and get to experience it like that. The film stars Jude Law and then Nicholas Holt. So I was talking about, there's another Nicholas Holt film coming up, as well as Ty Sheridan is another actor that I used to really not like Ty Sheridan, but he was great in this film. So I had a good time with it. I don't think it's the strongest film, and it kind of is paint by numbers. It kind of once it kind of gets to the end, you kind of just see the writing on the wall. You know exactly where everything's going to start happening. But for the most part, it was still a great film, and it was just a really fun experience of seeing a film that I knew very little about, and I knew absolutely nothing of what film I was about to see when I walked into the theater. So it was a really fun experience, and I'm going to start looking out for those a whole lot more. The secret cinemas that the local theaters are doing, and seeing if I can't get some cool movies like that. And so then we have The Wizard of Oz. So obviously I'd seen The Wizard of Oz once at some point in my life, and when I was little, and I just remember really not liking it. I think I had it rated at like a 2.5 or something on Letterboxd because as a kid watching it, I just did not enjoy The Wizard of Oz. So this is the first time that I'd seen this movie in probably 2 decades plus. It's been a long time since I saw The Wizard of Oz. I saw it at a theater. The theater was playing. Obviously, in anticipation of Wicked, they were playing The Wizard of Oz at the theater. So I saw it. It was a packed theater. Obviously, a little bit older of a crowd, but I just kind of went in and I fell in love. There was just something about this experience of seeing The Wizard of Oz, seeing it in theater, the moment that Dorothy opens the door and it goes into the big Technicolor lights. It was just like a beautiful magical movie moment. And I was watching this film being like, how could I mean, obviously as I was a kid, I probably just was more cynical and didn't want to watch a movie because maybe my parents were telling me it was really good. I was just maybe a little more cynical, but watching it now, just being like, I can't believe I used to not like this. I totally fell in love with watching The Wizard of Oz. I'm going all the way up to a 4.5 here for The Wizard of Oz. And then we have Wicked. This is another one. This month for me has been kind of an experience of seeing the raves and people loving a lot of these movies that are coming out, and I think I'm just a little bit lower than a lot of people on all of these. So people have Wizard of Oz or Wicked as 4.5. It is one of the they're talking about this as one of the best movies of the decade. I thought it was good. I thought it was fun. I had a good time, but like a 3.5 type of fun. It was kind of like I didn't think it was some masterpiece that the way a lot of people are talking about it, but obviously this is going to get nominated for a whole ton of Oscars. So this is another one where I'm excited in a couple months to revisit it again, and I'm sure that in a couple months it's probably still going to be in theaters, because this is going to be the big money maker over the holiday season. This is, this year's like Wonka, the film that was just in theaters for 4 straight months, or Avatar: The Way of Water a couple years ago, how that was just in theaters for 4 or 5 months in a row. So I'm excited to give Wicked another shot and see if maybe it goes up for me. But for right now, it was just kind of a fun, enjoyable 3.5 type movie. And then we have the original Gladiator. This is the second time I've seen Gladiator. I think I liked it a little bit more the first time. It's still good. I still enjoy it, but we're going with a 4 for the original Gladiator. And then obviously I watched that in anticipation of Gladiator 2. And this I'm gonna put probably at about a 3.5 as well. Wasn't the biggest fan of this sequel, but I think it is kind of a fun continuation of, I think it was, if you've seen the original Gladiator, there's a couple characters that I don't want to say they're left open ended, but it's like that they're important characters, and so now, however many years later, 2 decades later, with this film coming out, you knew that kind of where the continuation of the story was going to be, and it's exactly what you think it is. But I still, it was a fun experience. It's not one that I'm like super excited to go back and revisit at any point. I don't think I would be really interested in a Gladiator 3. I'm assuming Ridley Scott doesn't really care to make a Gladiator 3. But it's fun for what it is. We're gonna go with a 3.5. And then we had Red One. This is, a lot of people are talking about this like it's the worst movie of the year. I don't think it's probably the worst movie of the year, but it is down there. We're going to go with a 1.5 there for Red One. And so now let's jump in and let's go into each of the ratings and let's rank these films. All right, so starting down here with the 1.5s. I think we'll go Red One is the best of the 1.5s, and then I think we'll go Time Cut and The Witches, I think is probably the order that we're going there. At the 2.5s, I think we're going to leave it at that order, Emilia Perez, and then here, the threes, probably go Caddo Lake. Actually, I'll probably go Tangerine at the bottom, Caddo Lake. Um, Probably something like this. Probably go Back to the Future Part 3, Death Becomes Her, Paris 13th District, Blitz, Caddo Lake, and Tangerine. The 3.5s, I probably would go Wicked, probably at the... actually, I think I might go Back to the Future Part 2. The Apprentice is probably going to be pretty low. I mean, right here we're probably gonna go Flight below Gladiator 2, and honestly, the first thought that came to my mind and the differentiator there is I think I like Denzel Washington's performance in Gladiator 2 better than Denzel's performance in Flight, even though he is great in Flight. He is good in Gladiator 2. Um, I think maybe this is the order. We'll go Back to the Future Part 2, Wicked, A Real Pain, Castaway, The Order, Gladiator 2, Flight, and The Apprentice. At the 4 stars, probably going Back to the Future. Actually, probably Forrest Gump, Back to the Future. Juror number 2. Heretic and Nora. Where do I put Gladiator? Is Gladiator at the bottom? I think I like Gladiator better than... Actually, I don't know. I think maybe I might leave it like that. I might go Forrest Gump, Back to the Future, Juror number 2, Heretic, Anora, and then Gladiator, I think is the way we're going. The 4.5s up top. Probably is still Tick Tick Boom at the bottom. That's probably the order right there. Go 12 Years a Slave, Wizard of Oz, Million Dollar Baby, Tick Tick Boom, and then at the 5s by itself is Bo Burnham's Inside. And so that is it. That's 30 films rated and ranked. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of these. If you've seen the majority of these films, if there's any films that we're kind of differing on, if we have wide difference of opinion on how we rank some of these movies, yeah, just let me know any of these, if any of these are your favorite movies as well. Just love to get a conversation going about some of these movies down below in the comments. There also is only, as you guessed, there's one more month of this series of ranking what I've watched. So we're really close to, again, like I said at the beginning, completing 3 straight years of me doing this, of watching a movie for every single day of the year. So really excited. One more month to go. And if you'd like to like the video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.